Skyrim has been out for over a decade, and most players still haven't found half of what's actually in it. Not Easter eggs, not glitches. Real lore, hidden quests with no markers, secrets buried so deep, the only way to find them is to slow down and actually look. Today we're covering 10 of the best, starting with a ghost that quietly destroys everything you thought you knew about the most important man in Tamriel's history, Old Hroldan. Old Hroldan Inn is one of those places most players pass through once and never think about again. Small, forgettable tavern along the Karth River in the Reach. But rent Tiber Septim's room for 10 gold and sleep there past 1 a.m., and something happens that will change how you understand the civil war you've been fighting. You wake up to the innkeeper Adis, screaming. A ghost is standing in the room, dressed in ancient Nord armor, and when you talk to him, he says one word that breaks everything. He calls you Hjalti. Here's where it gets weird. The ghost is a soldier from a battle fought centuries ago. He tells you that Hjalti promised to make him a sworn brother after they sacked Hroldan together. He asks you to retrieve Hjalti's sword from a nearby Forsworn camp, and when you bring it back, he mentions something specific. The sword masters of Alcair who trained Hjalti. That detail is everything. Official Imperial history says Tiber Septim was a pure-blooded Nord born in Atmora, destined to rule. The Thalmor call him a fraud. The Stormcloaks worship him as their cultural North Star. The entire Civil War runs on competing claims about who he was. But an in-game book called The Arcturian Heresy presents a suppressed alternative account. Tiber Septim's real name was Hjalti Earlybeard, and he trained with swordmasters in Alcair High Rock. That makes him possibly Breton, not Nord at all. The ghost confirms every single detail the heresy claims. He uses the name Hjalti. He references Alcair specifically. He recognizes the Dragonborn as his old commander, most likely because both share dragon blood. This isn't theory. This is Bethesda embedding a counter-history into a ghost that only appears if you rent a specific bed in a specific inn in the middle of nowhere. Most players never find it. Those who do walk away knowing the theological foundation of Skyrim's entire civil war is built on something nobody agreed on, not even the people who were actually there. But if a hidden ghost rewriting Imperial history sounds like a big secret, wait until you hear about the college wizard who accidentally solved the greatest mystery in Elder Scrolls history by vanishing into thin air. Arniel's Endeavor. Arniel Gane is easy to miss. He's a Breton conjurer who shuffles around the Hall of Attainment at the College of Winterhold, muttering about research and refusing to tell anyone what he's actually doing. Most players talk to him once, get nothing useful, and move on. That is a massive mistake. The quest Arniel's Endeavor has 4 phases, and it only unlocks after you've completed hitting the books for the college main quest. The first few stages look like standard fetch work. Collect 10 Dwemer cogs, track down a shady fence named Enthyr to get a warped soul gem. Use a spell called Arniel's Convection to heat the gem inside Dwemer convectors scattered across Skyrim. Then, in the final phase, Arniel asks for something that should make every Elder Scrolls fan stop dead: keening. If you played Morrowind, you know exactly what that is. Keening is one of the 3 legendary tools of Lord Kagrenac, the Dwemer chief tonal architect. At the Battle of Red Mountain in 1E700, Kagrenac used his tools on the heart of Lorkhan, and the entire Dwemer race vanished, every single one of them, simultaneously. Nobody knows where they went. It is the biggest unsolved mystery in the franchise. Arniel is trying to replicate it, and here's the kick. He does. You hand him keening. He strikes the warped soul gem with it. There's a flash of light, and Arniel Gane disappears. Completely. No body, no ash, no trace. Exactly like the Dwemer. In Morrowind lore, wielding keening without the protective gauntlet, Wraithguard was supposed to kill the user. Arniel doesn't die. He vanishes. That distinction matters, because it suggests whatever happened to the Dwemer wasn't death. It was something else. Transportation, soul trapping, a different plane entirely. The reward for completing the quest is a conjuration spell that lets you summon Arniel's Shade to fight alongside you, his ghost, which means the game quietly confirms he still exists, somewhere, in some form. Nobody at the college ever mentions he's gone, but as dark as Arniel's fate is, at least we know what happened to him. The Dwemer who created keening in the first place, their story runs even deeper, and it's buried under a mountain, lost to the ages. The Dawnguard DLC has a side quest most people never finish, and some never even start. It's called Lost to the Ages, and it begins in one of 2 ways. Either you pick up a book called The Ethereum Wars by an author named Taran Dreth, or you wander into a Dwemer ruin called Argynthams in the Reach and find a ghost standing in the rubble. The ghost is Katria. She's a Nord scholar, and the first thing she tells you is that the book you might have read, the one credited to Taran Dreth, is hers. He was her apprentice. He stole her research, published it under his own name, and left her to die in the ruins she was exploring for him. She's been haunting Argynthams ever since, and she needs you to finish what she started. What she discovered is this. Around 1E221, Dwemer miners found a deposit of a crystalline material called Ethereum deep in Blackreach. It was luminescent blue, connected to Aetherius itself, and the artifacts it produced were unlike anything else in Tamriel. 4 Dwemer city-states formed an alliance to mine it: Argynthams, Raldbathar, Amzulft, and Betharzel. They built a forge beneath Bethoft in the Rift, using magma to smelt the crystal, and for a while it worked. Then greed destroyed everything. The alliance collapsed. The 4 cities went to war with each other over control of the forge and its supply. The conflict lasted decades, draining all 4 of their strength, and when Nordic High King Geller finally conquered them, history credited his military genius. The real reason they fell was that they'd already torn themselves apart from the inside. The Nords didn't defeat the Dwemer defeated themselves. The quest sends you to collect 4 Ethereum shards from ruins across Skyrim, which combine into the Ethereum crest and reveal a hidden lift to the forge. The Forge Master, a fire-breathing dwarven centurion, guards it. Beat it, and you forge one of 3 genuinely powerful artifacts. But the real payoff is Catria. She witnesses the forge, finds her peace, and moves on to Sovngarde. Justice, after a fashion. Then Tarandreth shows up as a random encounter afterward if you're carrying the artifact. He recognizes it, demands it, and attacks. The game lets you kill the man who stole her life's work. It doesn't announce this. It just happens. But Hidden Dwemer secrets aren't exclusive to underground ruins. The most devastating one in the entire game is written on a stone tablet in plain sight, in a tower most players rob without ever stopping to read it. Knight Paladin Gelebor. The Falmer are everywhere in Skyrim. Blind, hunched, feral things that swarm Dwemer ruins and attack on sight. The game treats them as generic dungeon enemies, and most players do too. Kill them, loot them, move on. But the Dawnguard DLC has a quest called Touching the Sky, and buried inside it is a character who reframes everything you thought you knew about what the Falmer actually are. The Forgotten Vale is a hidden region, accessible only through Darkfall Cave. It's enormous, isolated, and almost entirely optional. Deep inside, in a structure called the Chantry of Auriel, you meet Knight Paladin Gelebor. He's a snow elf, not a Falmer, an actual uncorrupted snow elf, the last one you'll ever meet, and he's been waiting inside that chantry for thousands of years. He tells you everything. The snow elves were a civilized people. They had temples, a pantheon, a warrior priest tradition. Ysgramor's genocidal campaign drove them underground, and the Dwemer offered sanctuary. Gelebor calls what happened next the betrayal. The Dwemer forced the snow elves to consume toxic fungi that caused permanent, irreversible blindness. Then they engineered it so the fungi became essential to the snow elf diet, guaranteeing every generation born underground would be blind from birth. Over thousands of years, enslaved and sightless, they devolved into the creatures you've been killing without a second thought. Gelebor doesn't call them Falmer, he calls them the Betrayed. Here's where it gets darker. His brother, Archcurate Verthur, runs the inner sanctum of the Chantry. The quest sends you through 5 way shrines in a ritual pilgrimage before you reach him, and when you do, the twist lands hard. Verthur is a vampire. He engineered the entire Tyranny of the Sun prophecy, a plan to blot out sunlight and allow vampires to walk freely, as revenge against Auriel for abandoning him after his infection. The holy order you've been making a pilgrimage through was corrupted from the inside by its own leader for centuries, and Gelebor never knew. Players who dig into Gelebor's data found something strange. He doesn't register under Detect Life, Detect Dead, or Aura Whisper. He appears as neither living nor dead, unique among every NPC in the game. What exactly he is after thousands of years of isolated vigil, the game never says. After the quest, he stays at the Chantry, keeping the way shrines open, waiting in case any snow elves who escape the betrayal find their way to him someday. None ever do. But as tragic as Gelebor is, at least his story has context. The next secret we're covering has almost none, and that's exactly what makes it so unsettling. The Ebony Warrior. At level 80, something happens that most players never experience, because most players never reach level 80. You walk into any major city, and a red guard in full ebony armor approaches you. No quest marker, no warning. He just finds you, and what he says stops the conversation cold. I have done all that can be done. There is nothing left, no quests to be undertaken, no villains to be slain, no challenges to face. Except for you. He tells you to meet him at a camp called Last Vigil in the Velothi Mountains, and he walks away. That's it. No explanation, no context. Just a man who has finished everything and wants you to kill him. Here's the thing. The Ebony Warrior is not a quest about a boss fight. It's meta-commentary on the player. Specifically, the kind of player who reaches level 80 in a game with hundreds of hours of content. Someone who has cleared every dungeon, finished every faction, exhausted every storyline, and has nothing left. Bethesda built this encounter as a mirror. The Ebony Warrior is you, in a different playthrough, at the end of everything. His dying words are, "At last, Sovngarde." He's a Red Guard. Sovngarde is the Nordic afterlife. Red Guards don't go there. His wish is almost certainly impossible, and the game never resolves it. The combat specs alone tell you how seriously Bethesda took this encounter. He wields an ebony sword of the vampire. He can cast Close Wounds and conjure Storm Atronach. He uses Unrelenting Force and Disarm, making him the only non-Nord NPC in the game capable of dragon shouts. He has the Reflect Blows perk, meaning melee power attacks can bounce back and kill you instantly. His armor gives 50% resistance to fire, frost, and shock. He's immune to paralysis, ice form, bend will, and the Wabbajack. He stands at 1.21 scale, taller than even an Altmer. His loot includes a human heart and a Daedra heart. Nobody explains what they're for. Nobody explains anything about him. The community has drawn comparisons to Umbra from Morrowind and Gainor from the Tribunal expansion, both infamous ebony-armored warriors with tragic backstories backstories and punishing difficulty. The pattern is deliberate. Bethesda has been hiding these mirrors inside their games for decades. If you kill him before finishing the main quest, he doesn't appear in Sovngarde. The one place he wanted to reach, the one door that might have been open to him, closes. And the game doesn't say a word about it, but the Ebony Warrior at least gets to make his case in person. The next secret never announces itself at all. It's hiding in a mad emperor's subconscious, being served by a god who shouldn't exist yet. The Mind of Madness. In Solitude, a filthy beggar named Dervanin wanders the streets asking for help. Most players ignore him. He's dressed in rags, rambling about a master who went on vacation and won't come back. It sounds like nothing, but if you stop and listen, he hands you Pelagius's hip bone and a key to the sealed Pelagius wing of the Blue Palace, a wing nobody uses because everyone inside went insane. Walk in with the bone, and you get pulled into the mind of Emperor Pelagius III, Pelagius the Mad, where a surreal tea party is already in progress. Sitting at the head of the table, cheerful and completely unhinged, is Sheogorath, the Daedric Prince of Madness. He gives you the Wabbajack and sends you to solve 3 trials inside Pelagius's fractured psyche: his paranoia, his night terrors, his anger. Standard Daedric quest, bizarre and funny. But then Sheogorath starts talking. He references the events of TES-4, Oblivion, with a precision that should not be possible. He mentions butterflies, blood, a fox, a severed head, and cheese. Every single reference maps exactly to events from Oblivion that only one person could have witnessed firsthand: the butterflies and the Shivering Isles. DLC. The fox, which is the alias of the Grey Fox from Oblivion's Thieves Guild. The severed head belonging to Mathieu Bellamont's mother in Oblivion's Dark Brotherhood. The cheese is a running joke from the Shivering Isles itself. Here's what that means. In the Shivering Isles expansion for Oblivion, the hero of Kvatch, Oblivion's player character, completes a questline that ends with them literally becoming Sheogorath, not serving him, not being blessed by, mantling him, taking on his identity, his power, his title. The Sheogorath sitting at that tea party in Skyrim 200 years later is the hero of Kvatch. He even says it directly, if you know what to listen for. He describes his title as something that gets passed down from himself to himself every few thousand years. He references Haskell, his chamberlain from the Shivering Isles, by name. The same voice actor, Wes Johnson, plays Sheogorath in both games. What this actually means is that 2 Elder Scrolls player characters are in the same room: the last Dragonborn and the hero of Kvatch, now a Daedric prince, sitting across a tea table inside a dead emperor's mind. And the game never explicitly says it. It just leaves the evidence there piece by piece for players who were paying attention 2 games ago. The entire quest is structured like an Alice in Wonderland fever dream. Mad tea party, surreal logic puzzles, identity confusion at every turn. It's not an accident. The joke and the lore are the same thing, but at least Sheogorath's identity is something you can piece together. The next secret hides its horror in plain sight, told entirely through journals most players walk right past: the Pale Lady. Frostmere Crypt is a Nordic ruin south of Dawnstar with no quest marker pointing to it. You find it by wandering, or you don't find it at all. Most players who do stumble across it sprint through, kill everything, grab the loot, and leave. They miss one of the best written stories in the entire game, told almost entirely through documents scattered across the floor. It starts outside. A bandit named Isa Blackthorn is being attacked, and if you save her, she tells you her friend went crazy and stole the boss's sword. That's all she gives you. Go inside, and the real story unfolds piece by piece through a journal called Kyr's Log. Kyr was running a failing bandit operation. 2 recruits showed up and saved it: Asa and a Khajiit named Rajir. Things turned around. Then, in week 15, a tunnel broke through into something nobody expected: a vast underground forest, completely sealed from the outside world. In the center of it, on a stone monument, sat a sword. Kyr took it as a trophy. Then Rajir started to deteriorate. His note to Issa is the moment the whole thing shifts from bandit drama to something genuinely unsettling. He writes that he sees her in every shadow, hears her voice on every breath of wind, in his dreams, in his ears, in his mind. He calls her the Pale Lady. He says they have to stop her. In the final chamber, Kyr is dying on the floor. Rajir is dead ahead of you, and standing in the middle of the underground forest is the Pale Lady herself, a named Wisp Mother sealed in that chamber since the Merethic era. Here's where it gets dark. An in-game book called Lost Legends reveals her ancient name, Omriel, a figure so dangerous that Ysgramor's own heirs spent decades hunting her before they managed to seal her away. The method was specific: a sword called the Pale Blade, placed on a pedestal in her chamber. That binding held for thousands of years, until Kyr walked in and took the sword as a trophy because he thought it looked nice. The player has 2 options: kill the Pale Lady outright, or return the Pale Blade to the pedestal and rebind her. The game doesn't tell you either of these things. You have to figure it out. And Isa, if she survives the attack outside, doesn't just disappear. She shows up later at the Moorside Inn in Morthal, grieving, alive. The game tracked her the entire time and never mentioned it. There's no quest marker for any of this. No journal entry pointing you toward Morthal afterward. No achievement. Bethesda just wrote a complete horror story, hid it in an unmarked dungeon, and left it there for whoever happened to slow down long enough to read. But the Pale Lady is at least a mystery you can solve. The next secret is one the Dwemer themselves created, and what it says about them is far more disturbing disturbing than any ghost: Calcelmo's stone. Calcelmo is the court wizard of Markarth, an Altmer scholar who has spent what he describes as 2 human lifetimes studying the Dwemer. His tower above Understone Keep is locked, guarded, and absolutely off-limits to anyone who isn't doing the Thieves Guild questline. Most players who do get inside are there for one reason: steal a rubbing of the stone tablet for the quest hard answers and get out. Copy it with charcoal and paper, hand it to Enthir and Karliah. Move on. Nobody stops to read what the tablet actually says. The stone is a Rosetta Stone for the Falmer language. Parallel columns of Dwemer script and Falmer script side by side, one of the only artifacts in the game that lets scholars translate between the two. Developer Kurt Kuhlman provided the official translation, and what it contains is one of the most chilling pieces of writing in the entire franchise. It is the Dwemer speaking directly to the snow elves they are about to enslave. The text describes what they called the welcoming chambers, spaces built in their depths for the snow elves' comfort and respite. It invites them to partake of the symbol of their bond, the fruit of the stones around them. It tells them that as their vision clouds, as the darkness sets in, they should not fear. They should know only the mercy of the Dwemer and the radiance of their affection, which unbinds their bones to the earth before and sets their final path to the music of their new eternity. Every word of that is a lie, dressed as kindness. The fruit of the stones around them is the toxic fungi. The vision clouding is the blinding. The mercy and the radiance of their affection is forced, permanent, generational disability inflicted on an entire civilization. The Dwemer didn't enslave the snow elves in a fit of cruelty or desperation. They planned it, wrote it down, translated it into Falmer so the snow elves could read their own destruction framed as a gift, and then handed it to them. This is the same species that built the automated cities, the tonal architecture, the brass gods still walking their ruins 1,000 years after their disappearance. They were brilliant, and they used that brilliance to write the most sophisticated propaganda in Tamriel's history, aimed at people they were about to make blind. The phrase 15 and 1 tones embedded in the text is a reference to Dwemer tonal magic, the vibrational systems that powered their entire civilization. It's there to make the text sound ceremonial and sacred. It's window dressing on a genocide. Calcelmo himself refuses to share his research with anyone. That research represents years of personal toil in some of the most dangerous Dwemer ruins in Skyrim. He tells you if you ask. He has spent a lifetime studying the people who did this, and he guards their secrets like treasure. The stone sits in his tower. Most players rob it without reading it, which means most players walked right past the single most damning document in the game and never knew it was there. But at least Calcelmo's horror is academic. The next secret is personal, and it asks a question the Stormcloaks and the Empire both pretend to have answered. What are Nords actually fighting for? Quine's sacred trials. There's no quest marker that leads you to Froki's shack. It sits in the mountains southeast of Ivarstead, a remote cabin with no road going to it and no reason to visit unless you already know it's there. Most players never find it. Those who do find an elderly hunter named Froki Wedded Blade, living alone with his grandson, Haming. Haming is a name you might recognize. He's the boy from the opening sequence of the game, standing in the street in Helgen while the dragon attacks. His parents died in that attack. He survived, and somehow, years into your playthrough, if you find this unmarked cabin in the mountains, he's just there, living quietly with his grandfather, mentioned in passing. No fanfare. But Froki is what this section is about, and Froki is furious. He has zero tolerance for the Imperial Divines, and he says so immediately. He calls them stolen idols, imposter gods sold by silver tongues. The goddess the Imperials call Kynareth, the gentle deity of wind and air worshipped in temples across Skyrim, Froki calls a pale shadow of the truth. The real goddess is Kyne, Shore's widow, sacred to any true Nord hunter, mother of men and beasts. Her veil is the storm. That distinction matters more than it sounds. Kynareth is a sanitized Imperial export, a divine figure acceptable to the cosmopolitan pantheon the Empire assembled to hold its provinces together. Kyne is older, wilder, specifically Norse in character, tied directly to Shore, the Nordic analog of the dead god Lorcan whose heart sat beneath Red Mountain. The Imperials didn't just conquer Skyrim politically. They replaced its gods with friendlier versions and called it the same religion. Froki's quest, Kyne's Sacred Trials, sends you to hunt 7 guardian spirits across Skyrim, ghostly, translucent versions of native animals, each one a champion chosen by Kyne herself. 3 lesser guardians first, a mud crab, a skeever, a wolf, then 3 greater ones, a bear, a mammoth, a saber cat. Each inhabits an area populated by normal versions of its species, wandering among them, distinguishable only because it glows. The final guardian is a troll inside Grey Winter Watch, near the ritual stone. The reward is Kyne's token, an amulet that reduces animal damage by 10% and increases bow damage by 5%. Mechanically modest, thematically enormous. Because what Froki is actually doing is passing down a religious tradition the Empire has spent centuries trying to absorb and neutralize. He's an old man in a mountain cabin with no followers, performing sacred rites to a goddess the temples have replaced, teaching them to a stranger because there's nobody else left to teach. The Stormcloak Rebellion gets framed in the game as a political dispute about a throne and a treaty. Kyne's Sacred Trials frames it as something older and sadder, a culture watching watching its gods get renamed and its traditions go extinct one generation at a time. Inside Grey Winter Watch, alongside the Guardian Troll, you find Froki's bow. He left it there. He wanted it to be found by whoever was worthy of the trials. He never mentions it. He just left it. That's the whole quest. No dramatic finish, no villain, no twist, just an old man's faith and a bow he left in a cave for someone he'd never met. And if that quiet tragedy feels like a low-key way to end a section, wait until the final secret, because the last one involves a man who built a museum to the cult that nearly ended the world, and he has absolutely no idea what he's celebrating. If you enjoyed this video and want to see every Elder Scrolls protagonist explained and ranked, click the video on the screen now.